guys know with these tests, and I do curve them, okay? Like, significantly last time, probably more than I wanted to, but that's okay. Okay, grades are good, and that's, honestly, I'm just co-counting you're learning something from it. But the point is that if you take it and there's 5 questions, you're like, that's harder than I thought I would be able to handle from doing the reading, good. That's what I want you to feel kind of challenged. Although I should say, of the multiple choice, you should feel like 70 to 80% you know. We went over in class, or you read about, and it's not too tough. I will give you a hint. Okay, let me give you another hint, okay? Just is on my mind. One of the short answers, which I haven't covered, and I'm happy to talk about a little bit in class if you want today, is how did deinstitutionalization, where am I going with this? You guys did the reading, so you all know where I'm going with this. Well, I'll give you a hint. Am I talking personality disorders or schizophrenia? Schizophrenia, okay? So let me help you. At the end of chapter 12, it talks about, I think it's actually really interesting, I haven't talked about it in class, but it's this idea of how does deinstitutionalization affect schizophrenia, okay? And if you've done the reading, you can tell me, but this is good because it also, you know, this final's not cumulative, but it allows you guys to really kind of think about like why this, for instance, would come together. So deinstitutionalization, how does that work? What is it? Do you guys remember? In case you choose that question, it's not actually a hard of a question to answer. In fact, even if you didn't do the reading, you could probably guess a little bit on this, but please do the reading on that part, okay? So let's just real quick, what's deinstitutionalization? Just a good review.
When they released patients who were in medical institutions?
Yeah, it was, remember, in the 50s and 60s, there was the advent and the growth, the rapid growth of antipsychotic medication, right? So there was this idea of like, well, we don't necessarily need to have a lot of people inpatient. Maybe we can send a lot of people, you know, to community care, family care, and we'll give them medication, and that's the solution to dealing with what we've kind of called that 5%, people that have extreme mental illness, right? And so deinstitutionalization means that people were more amongst the community. And it kind of talks about how that has different effects on specifically the label and stigma of schizophrenia. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I think it's a really good point, okay? I mean, one of the first things people think about with schizophrenia is, ooh, is that dangerous? Okay, and I want to stress, technically speaking, the answer is no. Okay? Not more dangerous than the average person. People are dangerous. Did you guys realize that? You did. You know that, right? You know that if, you know, you're walking at night and you're in a certain place and somebody's coming towards you, should you just assume it's probably a nice person just coming to tell me a joke, right? I wouldn't think that, okay? I mean, that's a possibility. They came to give you a hug and tell you you're wonderful. But that's not the way you go about thinking about it. The reason I'm saying that as a joke is you realize this is people in general. It's not people with mental illness. Okay? Now, is there a higher risk for that person interpreting a situation wrong? Yes. There's more delusion. There's more acting out. I think I gave you that one example of the person who had harmed somebody on the street, right, that didn't know they were doing it. That's more the exception, though, not the rule. Okay? Most of the people that are delusional actually just do what? This is really important. Starts with an I, a long I. Isolate themselves? Yeah. Most of it's isolation. A lot of times what people do, the people that suffer from mental illness are not looking to harm other people, right? And they're scared of the delusion just as much as other people are. Okay? And so most of one of the solutions will be, how do I isolate? How do I not take part in society the way everybody else does? This is just kind of some hints about things that I want to discuss. So, again, are personality disorders flawed as a categorical? Are they an issue? Which I'm going to argue they are. I'm not great on that, but they're, and they've also been like, you know, on the rise. There's that. There's DBT, which we're going to watch a little bit about DBT. We'll talk a little bit about it as a solution. Cool thing about DBT, which I really like, is the founder herself has personality disorder. Yeah, she has borderline. So one of the things that's really cool is looking at, you don't see this that commonly. I mean, you guys see Ellen Sachs, but is thinking about, for instance, people that suffer from the conditions themselves, maybe some of the most interesting people to teach us about how to cope with them, not just clinicians. Does that make sense? So we can kind of look at, so it being not so top-down, but a little more bottom-up, right? People that suffer with that, thinking about creative ways of dealing with their own condition. Yeah?
Does borderline personality disorder get confused with bipolar a lot? Because I feel like there's some, like, overlap.
It's a great question, okay? And I'm going to try to, in fact, the first slide I want to start with today does look a lot like bipolar, okay? So actually, I'll just read you, because we're going to start with the quiz in a few minutes, but this might help you too. So with Borderline personality disorder, alcohol and substance abuse, reckless behavior, reckless sex, reckless driving, self-injury, suicidal actions and threats. Are those all signs of a manic depressive bipolar what? They are. So you're absolutely right in that way. I'd say the difference is you don't see the splitting as much. You don't see that sense of self that's sort of not there. Borderline personality's idea, there's not a sense of self, so there's sort of that, sort of clinging on to somebody else, and then fury and anger that comes about when that person can't live up to being sort of your messiah, so to speak.
Cluster C.
Right? I don't see that as much with bipolar. Both, there's an overlap, don't get me wrong. People can get this wrong. I think the thing that I haven't seen is, generally speaking, somebody with bipolar is at high risk for suicide, but they're not at high risk for suicide and wanting to dagger sort of somebody close to them and say, I did this because I want you to suffer, or I'm pretending to do this because I want you to suffer. That's more borderline. Borderline has a little bit of this kind of emotional hostage piece. That to me is a hallmark difference of it, but both are really high. So here's a crazy fact. Borderline personality disorder has 400 times more likely to commit suicide than the average population. 400 times. How insane, right? So it's no joke. And I tell you, it's like that's why clinicians are afraid of it. I told you is because there's the threatening and the faking suicide, and then there's actually 10%. This is on the final wink. 10% of people with borderline personality disorders actually commit suicide. I don't know whether they're actually that statistic says that they successfully do, but that's really high. 1 in 10 people who are diagnosed will actually take their life. I think bipolar is slightly lower than that, but not a lot.
That's how many attempt to or do?
Do. So let me check that actually, see if I can give you the statistic a little better on that. It's in the book, but it's incredibly high. The suicide part is both high for both. So again, I'm saying that's what they have in common. I just remember reading that recently. It said 400 times more likely to commit suicide if you have a BPD diagnosis than the average population, which is, yeah, that's wild. Anyways, the suffering is what I want to kind of get back to. So when we talk about schizophrenia and personality disorder is this idea of labels. That's going to be a hint if you want to really tackle that when I say personality disorders as a construct, as a classification being problematic. Think about how labels, whether they're beneficial to us or not. They do help. I mean, if you knew that a certain population was that much more likely to commit suicide, that's kind of an important thing to know, isn't it? It is. At the same time, too, it's incredibly stigmatizing, too, because then there's like this, ooh, I don't want to deal with that. And that can be equally as problematic. Okay? Okay, that's kind of all the hints I wanted to give for now. We'll do some DBT, finished personality disorders. Let's get this out of the way. I think this will probably take you 10 minutes. What we'll do, I'll give you 20 minutes. Okay? So at 11:10, we'll start back up again. If you finish early, take a break. I know it's kind of early, but we'll take our break early. And then we'll plow through and get some of this stuff done, see where that leads us. Also, with the final schedule, that means that we would meet Tuesday. So what I was thinking of doing is, and I wouldn't be offended by this, how many of you, if I gave you, how many of you would like to do a review day for the final? Okay, I'm happy to do that. How many of you would rather stay home and study at home? And I won't be offended at all. Okay, the reason I ask is if it's a good turnout, what I would do is maybe even turn it into a bit of a review game. Okay, I know this I do, but in other words, put you in small groups and like kind of quiz you on stuff, and that way it has a little more like order to it. I don't like just kind of like teaching to the test. I don't want to do that. Okay, for a whole class. I feel like that's not treating you like college students. I will argue though that putting you in the groups does remind me of when I'm teaching more high school, junior high, but some of you are not that far removed from that, so it's not so bad. It's kind of fun that way. It makes it competitive. And then what you can do is when we do the review game, what I'd like you to do is have your notebook out and write down questions and you're like, ooh, I need to maybe know that for the final. Right? So you have your notebook out, jot stuff down. I've been able to do that a couple of quarters with abnormal for whatever reason, probably because we don't cover it per chapter. But I think that will also help your final scores. Okay? The other is, and I know it's been a little bit delayed in the posting, but is the extra credit. Take me up on that if you'd like to. That's due with the final. Turn it in as a hard copy. Okay? Turn in. You're going to have an option to watch a lecture on schizophrenia, or take one of the chapters we didn't read, and you're going to answer. I'm going to give you 5 options of questions at the end of the chapter. I'll post those so you know what to do. Okay? In fact, maybe we'll see if we can get that up, because it's already up, I just don't have it published. But anyways, if you would, maybe I can get that up while you're taking the quiz. Let's take the quiz, give you 20 minutes. If you finish early, walk around, take a break, read a book, whatever you need to do, and at 11:10, I'm going to start back up. We good to go? Yes.